If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 14 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that famous singer-songwriter Paul Simon of Simon and Garfunkel will die on August 8th, 2025. I'm also predicting that his funeral will be on August 12th, 2025. It is also possible that instead of him dying on August 8th, there will be a relevant, clear prophetic sign that will occur on August 8th that will reveal that Paul Simon will die on August 12th, and therefore August 12th will not be the date of his funeral. This time-stamped email proves that this prediction that Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025 has been known since November 9th. We can see here the timestamp November 9th, 2024. On November 8th, 2024, we received the relevant prophetic signs related to Paul Simon. And as I wrote right here, God was pointing to November 8th ahead of time because Simon's death will point to Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. And this is the reason why Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. In short, the date 8:1 and 11:8 hint at Revelation 8:1 in the Bible, which describes a period of silence that was observed in heaven. Paul Simon's first hit was Sound of Silence. As I wrote right here, it is exactly 38 weeks between November 8th and August 1st, 2025, and Paul Simon is predicted to die at the age of 83, for which 38 weeks hints at. All right, the analysis that God was pointing to August 1st was 100% correct. However, Paul Simon did not die on August 1st. Instead, God provided clear and relevant signs related to Paul Simon, which revealed adding 7 more days to reach August 8th. The sign we received was the news report, the breaking of the news of the sale of the storied mansion in Los Angeles that was built for the most prolific TV producer in history, and God uses extremes and records for his signs. Aaron Spelling, who produced the longest-running drama series in history, Seventh Heaven. That's how we get the addition of 7 days to reach August 8th. And Simon is associated with mansions, or I should say in God's signs, mansion theme and symbolism is related to Paul Simon because his biggest solo album was the Graceland album, and the song Graceland is about Elvis Presley's mansion. There's lots to that for why God is using this theme, but this is immediately recognized. I've been following Paul Simon's signs for years now, and I've known about this theme of mansion symbolism for over 3 years. And so that's why it was immediately recognized that this sign involving the sale of this mansion, and one of the big signs is the sale of Paul Simon's mansion. It's not only a mansion sign on August 1st that we received, but the story was the sale of the mansion. And that's again because one of the signs is the sale of Paul Simon's mansion back on July 1st, 2022. And that the details of that prophetic sign are explained elsewhere. Now, another thing about the 7 days connection is Paul Simon at this time on August 1st he still is, but he won't be by the date of August 8th, touring for his new album, 7 Psalms. The cover art for the album is from Thomas Moran's Two Owls, and it depicts owls. And on this same August 1st date, another prophetic sign was a mass shooting in the 41st state. Paul Simon was born in Paul Simon was born in 41, and the reason for that, the significance of that, is that the word he is equal to 41 in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. And it is a key that opens the bottomless pit in one of the 7 trumpet judgments in the book of Revelation that follows the period of silence that was observed as in the sound of silence in the beginning of Revelation chapter 8, Revelation 8:1. And Paul Simon is known for being a music composer, and music compositions use music keys. And also, so that's why the key, the 41st state, clearly hints at Paul Simon. In general, God uses the mass shootings for symbolism for the mark of the Antichrist, which is also mentioned in that same trumpet judgment, is alluded to anyway, in that same trumpet judgment in which the key opens the door to the bottomless pit to the demons that will cross over into the earthly realm and demonically possess people who have taken the mark of the Antichrist, which is the thing that comes out, which is symbolized by the things that come out of guns and go into people. That's why mass shootings are prophetic signs. So we have a mass shooting in the 41st state, and it was in the bar named the Owl Bar. The name of the bar in which the 4 deaths occurred, and God is associated with the number 4 with Paul Simon and his signs in general, and that's explained elsewhere. But it was 4 deaths, and that's because the door that opens to the bottomless pit is symbolized by the number 4, because the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the symbol for a door, and it's the key that opens the door to the bottomless pit. And so that's why the number 4. And so it was 4 deaths in the Owl Bar in the 41st state. Paul Simon's born in 41, and hints at key. And he was born on the 13th day of the month, and the 41 is the 13th prime number. And so that's why we also have the number 4 there. And when we add 7 plus 4 days, we get a total of 11 days. And we add that 7 plus 4 days to August 1st, gets us to August 12th. And also August 12th is 11 days after August 1st. And on August 1st, the story was the sale of the mansion, which sold for $110 million, which hints at 11. In other words, what I am saying is that God is also pointing to August 12th. And I believe at this time that it is the date for the funeral. But if this isn't correct, it is because Paul Simon will die on August 12th. And instead, on August 8th, we will receive more clear, relevant prophetic signs that will probably involve the number 4 and indicate adding 4 more days to reach the date on which it is predicted that Paul Simon will die on August 12th. But as of right now, anyway, I believe that Paul Simon will die on August 8th. 7 days after the 7th heaven sign the sale of the mansion of the producer of 7th Heaven. And also, by the way, Paul Simon's Graceland album released the song The Boy in the Bubble, and that song was inspired by one of Aaron Spelling's TV movies, The Boy in the Plastic Bubble. Another connection between Aaron Spelling, the mansion sale, and Paul Simon. And also, The Boy in the Bubble song is from the Graceland Mansion album, and that album is Paul Simon's best-selling album, solo album, and it is the 7th album of Paul Simon. Now, the reason for going into this right here at the beginning of this little introduction, the main point here, is that I predicted Paul Simon's death on August 8th, back in November of 2024. For those that are reasonable, for those with eyes to see, this will be clearly recognized. Again, I predicted back on November 9th, 2024, that Paul Simon would die on August 1st. Then we received the clear and relevant signs that indicated adding 7 days to reach August 8th. And so when Paul Simon dies on August 8th, as is predicted, it will therefore mean that I predicted his death on August 8th, if you will, back in November of 2024. The reasonable person will recognize that this is true. A dirty bomb is a conventional explosive that uses radioactive material. I am predicting that 3 dirty bombs will explode in New York City, in Times Square, Penn Station, and Grand Central Station. There will then be a massive evacuation from Manhattan Island. I am predicting that these 3 dirty bombs will explode on either August 30th or September 4th. I am also predicting that a dirty bomb will explode in the port of Los Angeles on September 4th. I am predicting that Tehran, Iran, will be nuked by the US or possibly Israel on September 7th, 2025. This will obviously be in response to the dirty bombs that are predicted to explode in New York City. I am predicting that Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom will die in a plane crash in St. Louis as they are traveling from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles in Busch Stadium in St. Louis on August 2nd, 2028. This will be during the predicted presidential campaign of Gavin Newsom. As a result of Gavin Newsom's death, Michelle Obama will become the Democrat Party's presidential nomination. Michelle Obama will, quote unquote, win the election over J.D. Vance on November 7th, 2028, and will become the president on January 20th, 2029. Donald Trump is predicted to run as J.D. Vance's vice president. This scheme to overcome the 22nd Amendment will backfire and inspire Michelle Obama and Barack Obama to run on the ticket with Barack Obama as Michelle Obama's vice president. She will then step down and Barack Obama will become the president again. It is predicted that there will be a massive Mary apparition on the beach in Rio, Brazil on April 24th, 2029. It is now recognized that there will be 2 massive Mary apparitions on the beach in Rio. The first of the 2 is predicted to be on March 22nd, 2029. These predicted Mary apparitions will not be secretive. They will be mainstream, worldwide news. Like all Mary apparitions in history, including at Lourdes, Guadalupe, and Fatima, this Mary apparition will be a demon pretending to be Mary. It is predicted that on April 26th, 2029, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to the 5th trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens. The demons pretending to be aliens will claim to be here to help us with our nuclear weapons. It is predicted that Pope Francis will be resurrected from the grave on April 26th, 2029, and it is possible that on this day, Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist and 5G frequencies. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. The resurrection rapture event will occur on Pentecost on May 27th, 2029. On September 11th, 2029, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth in the Indian Ocean. The greatest seismic effect of this will be felt on the other side of the globe, which is North America, and this will trigger an eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the East Coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be at the end of 2031. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. The connection between the date of Simon's dream to make 7 Psalms on January 15th, 2019, and the release of 7 Psalms on May 19th, 2023, is 4 years, 4 months, and 4 days. In God's signs, Simon is associated with the number 4. This is because of the repeating idiom in the book of Amos for 3 transgressions and for 4, and because the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the symbol for door. Door is the same symbolism as bridge, and Simon's biggest album was Bridge Over Troubled Water. One of the trumpet judgments after the period of silence in heaven is the opening of the door to the bottomless pit and demons crossing the bridge into the earthly realm. Right? This is one of the 7 trumpet judgments after the period of silence in heaven, and Paul Simon's first hit is Sound of Silence. This is Revelation chapter 8, and that's why he'll die on the date 8-8. But this, one of the trumpet judgments, is of the opening of the door and the crossing of the bridge of the demons from the bottomless pit. That's the reason for the door, which is the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The reason for the symbolism of 4 in God's signs. The word for the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is dalat, which is from which we get the word delta, the 4th letter of the Greek alphabet, which is what we get the word door from. So door is literally tied to the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Now, to elaborate more here on the idiom that I mentioned for 3 transgressions and for 4, this is a repeating idiom, a Hebrew idiom in the book of Amos, in the 1st chapter, which has 15 verses, which is why the dream that Paul Simon had occurred on the date 115. It hints at the 1st chapter of Amos with its 15 verses that incorporate the repeating idiom for 3 transgressions and for 4. The release of the album 7 Psalms was exactly 115 weeks before August 1st, and the signs that I mentioned on that date that revealed adding 7 days to reach the date it is predicted that Paul Simon will die on the date 8-8. And the 115 weeks is another confirmation of the significance of this 115 date, because the 115 weeks connects back to the release of the album, and the dream that was instructed to Simon to make was on the date 115. And that's because of, again, Amos 115, and we know that because of the prophetic sign of Wally Amos, the founder of famous Amos Cookies, who was the agent that first signed Simon and Garfunkel to a label, and did so through luring them into his office with cookies. And Amos 8:1, and Wally Amos died at the age of 88, and Amos 1 is the verse that describes a basket of summer fruit, and the month of August is the season or the month in which we have baskets of summer fruit. And the fact that Amos 8:1 is pointed to is also confirmation that God is pointing to Revelation 8:1, which describes the period of silence in heaven, and that's, of course, connected to Paul Simon because his first hit was Sound of Silence that launched his career. Incidentally, there are a couple of songs in Simon's career that he claims that he didn't write. They just flowed through him. He doesn't take credit for them. That includes the 7 Psalms album, much of it, as he said, but there are a few other songs, including Sound of Silence. Okay, so that's how it all ties to the book of Amos. And now in this book of Amos, we are clearly being pointed to, through Paul Simon, the 1st chapter with its 15 verses because of the idiom for 3 transgressions and for 4, which means the tolerable limit of transgressions has been reached, and now judgment and destruction are unavoidable, which is what the 7 trumpets are. The 7 trumpets that follow the period of silence in heaven. They're the trumpets of judgment and destruction, following the warning of the period of silence, and that's what Paul Simon's death will symbolize, a warning of a sound of silence before the fulfillment of the 7 trumpet judgments in real life, and the destruction of America, because Paul Simon symbolizes America, and God's primarily focused on America, his Gentile nation. Paul Simon has hit America and also American Tune, for example. And so, that's a long story how Paul Simon is so important in God's signs and how it symbolizes America. But it's explained over the other videos as well. So let's continue with this paragraph here. So now we've established the reasons for the association of the number 4 with Paul Simon. Again, it's the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and Paul Simon is Jewish, by the way, and also for 3 transgressions and for 4, because of the 7 trumpets that follow the period of silence. And again, Paul Simon's album is 7 Psalms, and he's known for the Late in the Evening song, which heavily uses trumpets. Okay, so Simon and Garfunkel's reunion concert in Central Park was a prophetic sign, and the repairing of their relationship, which is what that was all about, was symbolic of a bridge over troubled water. All right, they had a falling out, that was the troubled water, and then they got back together, that was the bridge. The bridge took place in the park, Central Park, the very, very famous reunion concert that attracted 500,000 people. And by the way, the name Paul Simon is equal to 500 in Hebrew gematria. And his only number 1 hit as a solo artist was 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. And the biggest album of theirs was the 5th album, Bridge Over Troubled Water, and on and on. Well, anyway, the concert, and by the way, the concert was exactly 500 months before the release of the album 7 Psalms. But also, the concert that was on August 19th, sorry, that's a typo. It was on September 19th, 1981, was exactly, all right, you know what? This is actually a typo, because the concert wasn't on August 19th. It was on September 19th. And I just recalculated the connection. It's even more profound than what I was explaining. Everything that I have explained so far in this paragraph is 100% correct. God is associating the number 4 with Paul Simon. But now I didn't need to explain this for this connection, but I have explained it anyway, and I'm going to keep it in this video because it's all true. But the connection doesn't involve the number 4 from the concert. And it makes so much more sense, actually, what actually is the real connection. And it's because of what I just explained. The connection is exactly 2,290 weeks. From the concert on September 19th to Simon's predicted death on August 8th, it is 2,290 weeks exactly, and that hints at the number 229, which is a number God uses to hint at the number 50, because it is the 50th prime number. And that is astounding beyond words, because again, the concert was known for breaking the record at the time for the largest concert, 500,000 people. Paul Simon's name equals 500 in Hebrew gematria. His only number 1 solo hit was 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. The big album was the 5th and last album, Bridge Over Troubled Water. And there's much more, actually, regarding the number 5 in Paul Simon. I mean, the 7 Psalms album is the 5 plus 5 plus 5 solo album, 15th solo album. But God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. Speaking of the number 4 and the door, because that's why the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the symbol for a door, that trumpet judgment with the door opening to the bottomless pit is the 5th trumpet judgment. And when the demons cross over into the earthly realm, as it's described in this prophecy, they will torment people for 5 months, and they will demonically possess these people for 5 months, which is what it alludes to in the prophecy. These people who will seek death but not be able to find it because they're demonically possessed. And it'll be those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist, which puts the things inside their brain, which is facilitating the demonic possession through delta brainwaves, speaking of the 4th letter, right? But the delta brainwaves will be triggered through the transistors or whatever you have in the people's brains through 5G frequencies. And frequencies are traveling through the air, as does music. And in the Bible, Satan is the prince of the power of the air. So he will demonically possess people through the air because he is the prince of the power of the air. And that's why these music signs and Paul Simon, because music is frequencies. Furthermore, the opening line, the incipit, if you will, which is the term for titling a work based on its first sentence, because back a few centuries ago, there was no such thing as titles. They went by the first opening line of the piece of art or work of literature. And anyway, the opening line of Graceland, the song from the biggest album, which is, okay, so that line is, the Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar. Mississippi is an interesting word. It has 3 letters that have a repetition of 4. No, I take that back. But there are 2 letters in that word that repeat 4 times, which gives us 4-4. The Graceland Mansion is in the 4 times 4th state. And it's not all a coincidence. But the song is about Paul Simon, speaking of more 5s, the song is about him traveling down the highway to Memphis, Tennessee, and that's the I-55. He would have been traveling from New Orleans, and it is the I-55. And furthermore, God is using the I-55 in general, not just with Paul Simon, for his big picture of signs, because it connects Chicago to St. Louis, to Little Egypt, to New Orleans. But anyway, the opening line of that song, the Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar. Paul Simon famously dated Shelley Duvall and infamously broke up with her at the airport, as in portal to the demonic realm, as in door or bridge, before her flight to the UK to film the movie The Shining, which is about the demonic possession of people and a hotel, which is mansion symbolism, tying it back to Paul Simon. It was a massive hotel, and that's mansion theme here. And The Shining is the reference to this demonic possession. That's why the Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar, because it's the delta brainwaves that will engender the demonic possession of people through the 5G frequencies. Incidentally, God has also used the Beatles for this same purpose, because of the repeating line in the chorus of the big hit and revolutionary hit, not just for the Beatles, but for music in general. It was the first alternative rock song, which is Tomorrow Never Dies, I think is the name of the song. And Lennon repeats, it is not dying, it is shining, if you know that song. And that's just the same thing that I'm talking about, the same theme of this use of shining for paranormal and demonic possession and immortality, as it's alluded to in that song and on all that. But that's explained in the other Beatles video, actually. I'm not explaining that well enough because it's not possible to explain it right here. So anyway, so that's amazing because it's the 5th trumpet. And here we have this, again, 2,290 weeks connection, which hints at the 50th prime number. And again, God uses the 50 because, again, his solo number 1 hit, the only one, is 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. And on, like I've explained a few times now. So that's an amazing connection. Again, that is the exact connection I would expect from the reunion concert. Because, again, it connects with exactly 500 months to the release of the 7 Psalms album. And that day, by the way, let me just get a diagram. That day connects with 229 days. And I knew this back then. I knew back in 2023, in the later part of the year, that God was adding 229 days to get January 3rd. And I knew that before January 3rd. And I knew that because it was the 50th prime number. And so what happened on January 3rd confirmed all of the analysis. We had another mansion sign, which was the burning of the famous Dolphins player, Tyreek Hill, which is another long story. And I won't explain it here because it actually involves the number 13, because the Dolphins symbolize the number 13, and so does Paul Simon. He was born on the 13th day of the month in 41, which is their 13th prime number. And also he lives in Wimberley, Texas, near San Antonio, which is where the Battle of the Alamo was, which was a 13-day siege, and on and on and on. And 13 colonies founded America, and he symbolizes America. So 13 does. So anyway, and it was the date 1-3, which symbolizes 13. Also, the Bridge Over Troubled Water album stole the show at the 13th Grammy Awards, and on and on. So Paul Simon is associated with the number 13. But anyway, that was the dolphin sign, because the dolphins are associated with number 13. And that's because of, I'm not going to go there. Anyway, that was 229 days. And I knew that ahead of time. And I knew it was because it was the 50th prime number. And I knew that because of the 500 months connection back from the release of the album to the prophetic concert. So now we have again the 50th prime number come up with this 2,229 weeks connection. It's absolutely amazing. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.